Jesse Sublett, thanks for coming. We're glad you're here, and the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Steve. That was a hell of an intro. If I can live up to the build-up. Don't you mind people grinning in your face? Don't you mind people grinning in your face? You know your mother will talk about you, your brother and your sister too. They don't care how you're trying to live. They will talk about you still. But bear this in mind. True friend is hard to find. Don't you mind people grinning in your face? You know, people carry you around. They'll jump you up and down. But as soon as your back is turned, they'll be trying to drag you down. But bear this in mind, true friend is hard to find. Don't you mind people grinning in your face? That's a Son House song. I just thought that last song was so tough. I thought I'd see if I could do something. I was thinking of something this morning that I was reminded of when we did this breath thing at the beginning. And I like to play my bass to get centered. I kind of go into this kind of a meditation trip. And I've been doing it since I was a young teenager. And it's just it's part of my whole coolness identity thing. And one thing I learned, I've been playing bass since I was like 14, and that's like quite a few years. I was playing really hard, you know. You want to rock out, you're playing really hard, you want to be loud, you know, the guitar player's too loud and you want to keep up with him, and you're just rocking out, right? You're just banging the hell out of your instrument. And then when I started playing upright bass, the technique is different. You're not hitting it like that. It's more like a disc motion. It's more of a pulling thing. And your hand is more relaxed, and it's difficult to make the transition, and it's really counterproductive. You don't get as good of a sound. And finally, after many years, I've been playing for, about 8 years now, it finally became easier, and I did realize I was playing lighter, and you get so much more tone out of the strings. Any instrument that you stroke or hit to get sound out of it makes a much richer sound when you touch it softly. And what the musicians what they like to say is that don't try to beat the sound into the instrument, coax it out. So that has applications in a lot of areas. It's really hard to be cool when you have cancer. Like I said, being cool was always part of my driving ambition growing up in Johnson City. As soon as when I was a little kid, the fact that LBJ was from there, I thought, wow, this is really the center of the universe. And then that was really cool. I love the man. I'm really fascinated by him even now. But I started growing my hair out and wearing, wild socks and what my dad called Mexican boots. People started trying to kill me on my way to school and stuff, calling me a faggot and stuff. and I decided it wasn't that great of a place to live. And so that only, accentuated my drive to be, something different and, be something as opposed to, farmer or, welder. In fact, we were talking, David and Jan and I have a lunch group. We meet at Hoover's, and everybody was talking about guns, and I said, well, how many of you have actually been, shot at or had guns pulled on you? And I think I was the only one, right? Well, David may be an exception. So, when you have long hair in a small town in the 60s, it's rough. And so that kind of accentuated my personality. And as I grew, I became a teenager. I wanted to be a rock and roll star. Always wanted to be something. The first rock and roll band I saw, I thought, that's so exotic. I've got to be that. Their lives have to be so different than, the humdrum day-to-day life that I know. I met them. I thought they were really exotic people, a little suspecting that, no matter what you do, you get up in the morning, put your pants on one leg at a time. You've got to clean the hair out of the shower drain, and no matter who you are, Queen of England, your dog is, or cat is not going to respect you, or, you know what I mean, or your kids. So, anyway, so that was my direction for a long time. And then, so my wife and I, Lois Richwine, we got together in 1978, and we'd been together quite a while. In 97, it's almost 20 years, right? Yeah. So when I started having these lumpy things in my neck, and I've been sick a lot, and various things have been going on, and I was always a smart ass when the doctor called that I'd gone to have tests with, and she said, well, I have some news for you, and this was that climactic moment we all, don't want to have, and she said, I have some news for you, and I made a joke about it. Yeah, as long as it's good news, let's hear it. And she said, well, actually, it's really not good news at all. And so I had neck cancer. I had, in fact, I'd had it for a long time, it turned out. It had been misdiagnosed when we lived in Los Angeles back in 1993, and I had a little lump taken out. The doctor said next morning, well, it was bigger and more involved than we thought, but it was just a cyst. Don't worry about it. And so went home, and the next morning, the Northridge earthquake struck, and practically shaken off the couch. And, it was, looking back, I guess that meant something, other than there was a major earthquake. And so years went by. A couple of years went by. We had our son. He's 4 years old, and we're living back in Austin. And boom, we get this news, and it keeps getting worse. When something like this happens, they never tell you everything all at once. They don't. I guess they don't want to discourage you too much. But as it turned out, I had squamous cell carcinoma, and since it had been misdiagnosed, it had been going on long past the time when they would expect you to survive. And so I would met my different team of doctors, and the first time this happened, it was kind of funny. The guy's looking at my file. This is my chemotherapy guy, and he says, oh, you're famous. And I said, well, I had a band, and I wrote books. And he goes, no, you're case. You're not supposed to be alive. Another funny thing about this guy, I said, well, his name was Casper also, like Casper the Friendly Ghost. And I said, we were there a long time. This was our first appointment with him. He was a pretty cool guy. Our son's name is Dashiell, and he goes, "Oh, like Dashiell Hammett, right?" Instead of like, "Oh, what is that? Is that Norwegian?" Or, So we like this guy, and he's coming and going, and comes back in, and he goes out, and so well, we should ask him, what he thinks, and so I said, no. So what do you think of my chances of getting out of this thing? And he goes, well, pretty slim, actually. So that was depressing. And it turned out I had my regular doctor, my main doctor, Dr. Melba Lewis, who turned out to be a ballroom dancer, a very cool lady, like the Rolling Stones, and we got along very well. She would not tell me everything either, and it was a good thing, but I did look up the statistics, and I worked out to about between 4 and 8% chance of survival. So we decided, I'll be in that 3%. If there's 3%, I'll take it. I'll be that. So. But you've got to gear yourself up, and you've heard about this, and I know some of you have dealt with it. But so you try to figure out, well, how am I going to handle this? And cancer is so personal, it feels like. There's all kinds of ways you can die and get disfigured and mutilated, but something about cancer seems very personal. It's never like your big toe. I can do without my big toe, or eyelashes, you're going to lose your eyelashes, that's it, sorry. No, it's like breast cancer or testicles or your throat, and like, as I proved to you, I don't sing that well, but, I really do like singing. I didn't like the idea of not being able to talk or sing, and growing up in the 60s, as it looks like some of you did, you've seen the people that had a laryngectomy where they have the hole in the throat and they talk with that bleeding sound, and I really didn't want that to happen either. And then I just didn't want to be the monster in the Sublett house, hidden behind curtains. So I worried about this quite a bit. And so you get the surgery part, they put you in a gown, and I'd rather take off my clothes right now than go around in a hospital gown. I'm not modest. I'm not an exhibitionist, but like those things are so horrible. You put those things on, and you go, okay, this is it. This is bad. So I got the diagnosis on the 19th of November, 1997, and she scheduled this. She wanted to have the surgery right away, December 2nd. I think that adds up to about 15 days, something like that. And so that's right before Thanksgiving. So Lois is very aggressive, strong woman. If you know her, you know what I'm saying. Where's the nervous laughter? I don't know. But so right away after this phone call, she goes, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to beat it. We're going to do it. And so that made me feel better. And, started calling people. No one else I knew had throat cancer, but I called anybody who had any kind of cancer, talk to them, get some support from them. And I started going. I always went for walks on Lady Bird Lake. It's very inspiring there, as you know, I'm sure. Things started happening. One thing was that I'm walking and I'm coming up on this bridge, and the bridge over the lake, and it hits me. This thing is like a bridge, I'll cross over this bridge. Don't look down. Just, it's a bridge from one part of life to another. This surgery, this treatment. At some point I'll be on the other side. So just do it. So as I crossed the bridge, I thought about that, and I felt a lot better. And so a few days later, I go for another walk. And this was a big one. I had read about the Transcendentalists, the Henry David Thoreau and those guys, and they saw God through nature, and basically those were guys who knew how to take a walk, and so I'm walking down to the lake, and I know it's fall, obviously, and the leaves are so colorful. I mean, but it's not just the usual orange and red and purple and yellow. They're on fire. They're glowing, and it gets more and more intense the closer I get to the lake. And I think, okay, I realize I'm in a state. It could be me, but this is really something, and it was just super intense. And it got even more so, like there was lights on these leaves. And I keep going and feeling a lot of things. And I'll jump ahead now. It wasn't just me. It was, I read about this. There's a time of year where the chlorophyll flushing of the leaves peaks, and during that time period, the colors are sensationally vibrant, and they really do glow. And some years, excuse me, it's more intense than others. So that's what I was seeing. But of course, I was in a state. So I get down to the lake and watching a great blue heron. And I really like birds. I get a lot out of them. They're really interesting, and so I don't know if you've seen the grackles doing the mating dance lately. You guys know what that looks like? It's not a pretty sight. Nothing grackles do is really very, very cool. But anyway, so I'm staring at this great blue heron, and I hear this voice behind me. It says, what you're about to do is going to be harder than learning how to fly. And that's really as articulate as I can make it. But I mean, you could see, you can get the metaphor there, what that meant. And but it was really like a voice behind my ear. I turned around and there was nobody there, but it really happened. So that was pretty inspiring. So I went on, and that was Thanksgiving Day. Lois was making Thanksgiving dinner, and the house is full of great smells, and her cooking won me over. When our first date, long story, but I was kind of burning the candle at both ends, and we're trying to get together, and I had pneumonia and was in bad shape, so she came down from San Antonio where she lived and brought a big thing of eggplant parmesan, and that was not the most exciting thing about that weekend, but it really it sealed the deal. And her family's Italian, and their traditions and everything, I really got sort of hardwired into my personality, and all these things kind of added up to giving me the power to get through this thing. So I had the surgery, 13 and a half hours. The pathologist took out, when they say you've got one lymph node that's bad, that's cancerous, they've got to, irradiate you and everything, and it's bad. Well, I had this guy took out 80 lymph nodes, and 48 of them were bad, and he just gave up there. So it was a pretty terrible case, and at that time they didn't really know how, they didn't have their treatment protocol for this thing developed. So my doctor was very advanced, and she really went out and just really hammered me with radiation and chemo over the next 9 months, and so now that the treatment that she did is fairly standard, but was pretty new at the time, and so when your mouth and your throat gets operated on and it gets radiated, and you get chemo in that area, I mean, it's you realize how much you interact with the world, with your mouth, with your taste, and with smells like just a little tiny raspberry seed. It might take me 15 minutes to work from the front of my mouth to the back, or it might choke me. I couldn't eat. My 80-year-old father-in-law every day after radiation we would go to HEB, and it was like being an alien on a planet. You know, like, what can I eat here? You know, because I couldn't eat anything. I lost 50 pounds, and I'm, you know, not too fat normally, and vomited 100 times a day sometimes. I thought that nausea meant, you know, you have a little queasy stomach, but for me it meant something else. And so it was just very surreal. I don't want to go on and on about it as much as I have, but you really learn to appreciate the small things in life, simple things in life. And so learning to eat again and being able to enjoy foods and drinks, you know, remind you about how great it is to be a human being. So we got through that. And just to reiterate, and, you know, it was the love of my wife, and our son was 4 years old. I didn't want his, you know, him to grow up with a, you know, without a dad, or with, you know, and music. What we did was, my doctor recommended this book called Getting Well Again, but there's a lot of different. It's a basically visualization or prayer or whatever you want to call it. But, well, excuse me. What we would do is I would meditate and think about my body combating this disease and overcoming it. And I imagine little naval battles between my white blood cells and the cancer cells. And you make plans. You visualize, well, 3 months after 3 months after the surgery, we'd go see the whooping cranes come in Aransas. And 3 months after that, 6 months after that, we'd go to the Grand Canyon, and things like that. Trips, you know, rewards. You start building your, you know, making plans to go on with your life and change your life, and it really helps. So, and the other thing was, this book recommended was to look back in your life and see, well, what might have caused this? What might have gone wrong in your life that you were under such stress that you were susceptible to this disease? And oftentimes it's something that happened like a year or 2 years before the disease got started. With mine, it was really complicated because it had been going on so long. It was really hard to tell. So one thing that I look back on, and there was a problem, was that in 1976, 2 years before, almost 2 years before I met Lois, my girlfriend had been murdered by a serial killer in South Austin. I was just starting out my music career. I came home and found her. And it's a long story I don't want to go into, but it was a terrible thing to go through, to be taken down to the police station, and after reporting the crime, and the police think that, oh, well, here's the guy who did it. You know, he did it, and then he called us. Well, that's not the only terrible thing about it. I mean, she was a really wonderful human being. We'd been together 4 years. She was a poet. She was very pretty, a good person. And so this was really a black spot on my life. And the only way to get through it was to sort of blot it out. And as you know about, you've heard more and more over the years about post-traumatic stress syndrome. Well, I had it, which I didn't realize. I didn't know. I'd heard of it, but I thought that was mostly for war veterans and stuff. So every day I dealt with this thing, or like you smell something, or I hear music from that time period that we were together, anything, just flashback and see terrible things and imagine terrible things. And so, and I had a lot of guilt associated with this, a busted window that the guy got into, or if someone dies of a heart attack, the survivor feels guilt, so this was something more than that, everything that I'd done wrong, weighed upon me. So one thing I decided on that long walk was to write a book about the cancer, my music experiences, and this murder. So I had to go back and investigate this murder, which I had blotted out all these years, and find out what other things that had happened. The guy had killed at least 3 other women in Kerrville, and I didn't know anything about that at the time. I couldn't handle my own grief, so I didn't care about those women. I didn't think about them. It was just a story to me. So I went back and uncovered the story, actually, and it was really awful. It was really, really awful. Terrible things that people can do. And all those years, at that time, they were still bringing the death penalty back. And so one reason the guy confessed was that he didn't want to be the first guy to be executed. There was a lot of speculation. Well, who's going to be the first execution? So he confessed and helped out the police and got 2 life sentences instead. And so all these years I thought, well, I'm against the death penalty, but if they could just have executed him, that would be good, which is crazy. You can laugh, it's kind of weird, it's kind of funny. I was like, he deserves to die, but, the death penalty's wrong, but you know what I mean? So, to get to the point, after all this research, I went to Kerrville and saw where the guy grew up. He was a messed up kid from, I don't know, maybe even as a toddler. There's something wrong with this kid. But, no baby is evil. No one is born evil. Somebody has to put that in there. So I saw that, Kerrville's not that much different than Johnson City. It's an ugly little town. I knew kids like him probably, not that bad, but so I started thinking, well, let's be human here, He should stay in prison the rest of his life, but death penalty is wrong. So, but from that, I ended up working on the parole protests every couple of years. So every couple of years, he comes up for parole, and I have to talk to the parole board. Last 2 years ago was especially rough because the parole board screwed up. We got letters saying that he was under review, and people write their letters saying why, reminding the board why this person needs to stay in prison. And so we got a letter saying, okay, he's been declined. And then we got another letter saying that he was going to be released. And this upset everyone. And so the board realized they had screwed up. They had thought he qualified for a program that he didn't qualify for. And I think obviously they didn't look at his file very closely either. But so we ended up with a personal meeting with the board. I went down there to Angleton, which, a lot of places in Texas, you're driving there and it seems like, well, this is the end of the world just right around the corner. And so this is one of a long drive. And you get there and it's a little office building. And Diane's father was there. He's in his 80s now. Looked kind of like Cliff Robertson or something like that. A real square-jawed oil man from Houston. Was very confident that Obama was going to get beaten. Very confident. And I haven't seen this guy since 76. And so it was a weird meeting, seeing him again. And two of the other women's brothers, one of them, and these are real country guys, these guys from Kerrville, very country. One of them had actually gone into the Marines so that he could learn to kill, so that he could kill this guy. He fought in Iraq and everything. And he had no longer necessarily wanted to kill him, but he really did talk about it a lot. He said that, what did he say? He said, I'm going to tell God that if this thing about, I don't know, if God needed any help, with this guy, well, he'd be glad to help out. It was just very strange being with all these guys in this room. We made a presentation and realized we had to, this was our shot to keep this guy in jail. So I said things that her father didn't know about the crime, about how awful it was, and so it was. I felt bad for him, shook him up quite a bit, but we kept him in jail. So anyway, long story short, I keep saying that, but I mean it this time. You have these experiences and you realize that, that's this life. There are people all over the planet having a bad day, probably, in all likelihood, a lot worse than the day you're having. Your father dies, your parents die, you get cancer, there's always some other guy at the end of the line, he's having the worst time of anybody on the planet, so that's one thing that you learn. Don't ask why, just what? Don't be, it's life. Bad things happen. So you have to find the strength to get through it. And for me, it was love and art, nature, and this unnameable thing that we've got that guides us. So thanks for listening to my long ramble. Thank you.